I wanted to talk about a couple of different types of posts that I've seen pop up quite often on Facebook in the PMU groups. And these posts, they generate either a lot of support, like people agree, lots of support, or just the opposite. They also get a lot of comments of disapproval, people not a fan of these type of posts. And so I wanted to talk about that today. And I am a little nervous talking about this today because this may be considered controversial, maybe. I don't know. To me, it's not. But other people may consider it. And, talking about something that can be considered controversial, it's a little scary these days. So, but what I wanted to talk about today and what this whole podcast is about is not judgment or anything along those lines. It's really about empathy. It's really about kindness. I wanted to highlight a couple of different types of posts, to evoke thought and maybe give some insight on maybe a few things that you didn't think about. And so that's what this podcast is about. Really empathy and compassion. So I'll start with one of the posts that we have seen quite often. And you may be somebody that has done a post like this. You may be somebody that is in support of a post like this and offers advice and support, or you may be somebody that does not support this kind of post. You think somebody shouldn't be posting this, and no matter where you stand, that's okay. We are all entitled to our own opinions and to feel what we feel. And like I said, I'm somebody that I don't want to be judged, so therefore I judge no one. And that's not what this conversation is going to be about today. But so the post is, usually it's a young tech, a young PMU artist, and they post a picture of their client on the board. And their client is in their chair right now. At that very moment, they post a picture of her. And in the post, they say, my client is here with me right now. I need help. I need your advice. And sometimes it's advice on what color to pick. Sometimes it's advice on how to correct the brow. Sometimes it's advice, color's not going, whatever it may be. Whatever it may be. And some people go on and they're very supportive. They comment, they give advice, they try to help that technician through that situation. And then there's some people that can be a little snarky, all the way to downright mean and dismissive of that tech, that young tech. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Some of the remarks, and this just happened not too long ago, some of the remarks, the not so kind, not supportive remarks are, if you need to be asking that question, you shouldn't be doing PMU, you need to go back to training, You shouldn't see clients anymore. I'd hate to be your client. I mean, there can be, and sometimes worse than that, comments worse than that. And I definitely agree. If when we're asking questions, and maybe they're basic questions, color theory, how to correct a blue eyebrow, maybe they're, pretty basic questions. Maybe that tech at that point in her career shouldn't be taking on those kind of appointments. That very well could be. But we're in the moment. That technician has a real human being in her bed right now, in that very moment. Imagine the courage that it takes for someone to put that post, that cry for help. And sometimes the way they post, it feels desperate. You can feel the urgency and the desperation. They desperately want help, and they're afraid. They're afraid. I can feel it. I feel it. They're afraid. They don't want to make a mistake on that client. And in that very moment, they're reaching out to their PMU community for help, just to get them through this moment, help them do what's right by that client. And in that moment, like I said, there's some people that can empathize and they're compassionate and they offer advice and they help. And they're soothing. Some people go way out of their way. I mean, you can just hear the warmth and the kindness, in their response. And on the very other extreme, there's people, it seems, go out of their way to say something that, it's just not very nice. And I think it's important that before we react, we understand the situation. I think it's important to react with empathy and with compassion, and not just for the technician, but for the client. There is a real human being in that bed at that very moment. And so not only does the technician need help and support through this moment, so does the client. I care about the client as much as I care about the technician. I think about the client. I'm not just thinking about the technician, but my heart goes out, for both people in that situation, because they're kind of in it together. And I have always been someone that offered support. Just get them through that situation. And then I'll private message them and, start a dialogue, and offer advice and maybe refer them out to somebody that can help them in that particular case, whether it's color theory or, correction or whatever the situation tends to be. And I might feel a little personal about this, because that young technician posting on Facebook for help, that was me. That was me 21 years ago, 20 years ago. That was absolutely me. Yes, it was during a time where there was no Facebook, so I couldn't take a picture and, post it on a group and hope for advice within seconds. But I absolutely found myself in situations with the client in the bed at that very moment, and I didn't know what color to pick. I was like a year and a half in. I didn't quite know what to do. or bleeding a lot, and it scared me. I was new, I was young, I didn't have a lot of experience behind me. And maybe that procedure was beyond my skill level, but sometimes you don't know until you know. And when you're in the situation and you're already have started tattooing, it's like you just got to get through it best you can. But that was me. I used to use a pigment line and soft tap, when I first started out. And a handful of times, I'd stop and I would call the owner of soft tap, Alexis Lawson, during the procedure with the client there. And because I didn't know what to do, I was scared and I didn't want to fuck up, and I would call Alexis Lawson. She always picked up her phone. Every time I called, she picked up her phone. I just think she just sat at, her office and just took phone calls like this all day long. And she was so kind and so gracious, and she never belittled me. She never made me feel any other way except welcomed. And she would ask me a bunch of questions. I'd walk her through it. Back then, we didn't have the technology and the cell phones with the cameras. So it was a little bit more difficult to offer support, in that situation on the fly. But nowadays it's a whole lot easier. We can. But I definitely reached out, and I kind of looked at Alexa back then as a lifeline, So, I did that. And so when I see a post like this, it just brings me back to my humble beginnings. And when I didn't know a lot and I was learning and I was making mistakes, and I just can feel for that young artist. I know what she's feeling. I can empathize. I can feel her feelings. I'm super sensitive to her situation, and I'm non-judgmental, and I just want to help. I just want to help her client. That's all I want to do in that moment. When we get that young technician through that moment, then we can have a conversation about maybe some further education, some further training that she should pursue. Maybe we can have a conversation that, that type of procedure was beyond her skill level. Maybe she should put those type of procedures on the back burner until she develops a little more knowledge, a little more training, things like that. I don't know. What do you think about that, Olivia?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like you shouldn't discourage someone from asking for help.
Yeah, I think when we get negative and we criticize and ridicule and shame somebody for reaching out for help in that manner. Look, and I'm not saying that's the right way to reach out for help or not. I can also sympathize and understand how some people feel the exact opposite. I'm very good at empathizing with people and on both sides of a subject. And I can understand why that would be disturbing to somebody, and they might give the advice, don't take, clients like that into, further your training. But some of the comments, they're just downright rude. They're mean, they're dismissive, and I just worry how comments like that are going to affect somebody, how it's going to affect them mentally and emotionally going forward. That might, it can be humiliating. It can embarrass them. And that might prevent that particular technician from ever asking for help again because, they had a negative experience. And I would hate to see that. What we do is really super hard. It takes a lot of skill in a lot of different areas, and it's super hard. We have to be good at a lot of different things. There's a lot of knowledge and theory that we have to read, learn, absorb, and put to practice and be able to execute. And we have a lot of different scenarios that we have to look at, assess, and then make these decisions. Sometimes within 2 hours, or, the clients with us, on average, 2 hours for an eyebrow. We have to make quick decisions on what color and this and that and shape, rather quickly. So that's my worry is the effect, the effect that reading these comments, the negative comments, the dismissive comments, the effect that could have on somebody. It could completely discourage them from wanting to do permanent makeup. Some people, I think they're more fragile than other people. I think there's people out there that are really super strong and they can handle, comments like that and negativity. They process it, better, and they're just stronger and they can handle it better and they'll get beyond it. But I think there's also people that are more fragile, and comments like that, it can be really destructive to them. It can discourage them. It can completely deflate them. And they may leave the Facebook group. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I have actually spoken on the phone to 4 or 5 of these young techs that this exact same thing happened to them. And at least 3 of them removed themselves from all the Facebook boards and got a really bad taste in their mouths for Facebook boards, and just felt there was no PMU community, and the PMU community was vicious and non-supportive, and it doesn't have to be like that. That was just one experience, but here's the world, or our time frame, and you can just have one little experience, this tiny little blip, and that can make someone feel like that will always be the experience. That's what happens. That is the experience. It's not true. But it can make someone feel like that and believe that, and it can be super discouraging. And like I said, Facebook, the PMU groups, yes, sometimes we can see some negative stuff going on. We can see some rude comments. I've seen bullying. We've seen a lot of mean, disturbing things going on. But in comparison to the support, the community, the networking, the beautiful stuff that goes on, it's small in comparison. It just seems like the negative that sticks with us more. The negative gets more attention. Just like on the news and with media, we focus on the negative. The negative seems bigger and more overpowering, than the positive. And in reality, it's not. It's really small in comparison to, how much beautifulness and awesomeness and kindness and support and love and sharing and relationships and all that beautiful stuff that goes on in our PMU boards. And all it takes is one situation like that. Imagine if that was her very first time posting in a Facebook board and that was her experience. She'll probably never, ever, ever, venture on a Facebook board again. And if that's the case, I feel like, she's really missing out on a beautiful community, because I do. The PMU community is a beautiful community. just beautiful souls, beautiful people that want to help and lift and elevate, each other and other artists. That's mostly what our community is. But that might not be someone's perception of it if that was their experience. And so I just wanted to bring that to light. And if you're someone that did put a post out like that and you got some negative comments, it's okay. And I hope you're still on the boards, and I hope you've processed that and moved beyond it, and you've recognized that that's just a small percentage of the boards and the types of responses and and that sort of thing. Mostly what happens is people are going to come rushing and gather around you and offer you advice and compassion. So so just a little insight, something to think about. Sometimes we don't think about those things, and I think we need to be more aware, more conscientious on how our words or what we post, how it can affect somebody. Really take away the fact that she needs more education. She shouldn't be asking those questions with her client right there on a Facebook group. Take away all that. And if all we considered was that human being in that moment, a real human being, fear, afraid, reaching out to her community for help just to get her through this moment, if that's all we thought about and took in consideration in that moment, not all the other stuff, she should be doing this, not that stuff, not yet, just this human being that needs help, I think we would see far less of those type of negative comments, right?
Yes.
You think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we should lead with kindness.
Yeah, lead with kindness. And I'm not saying that, then after the kindness, after the love, after the support, after the empathy, that we can't have a conversation with her about reality. Look, this was beyond your skill level. You really need to go train. You need to do this, you need to do that. That conversation needs to happen. But that's not what really needs to happen in that moment. In that moment, I feel what needs to happen is we need to help and we need to support and we need to have compassion and get her through that moment. That's just my 2 cents on that.